everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nicole and today we are going over all things curtains. I finally got most of the curtains that I bought hung up in the home, so I kind of wanted to go over a little bit of three parts really. First thing is kind of a curtains 101, just a bunch of different options, what to look for, kind of what's out there. There are definitely some options that I didn't really know about and just want to make sure that you know most of the things that you should before you go and purchase these curtains. They are not always inexpensive, so before you really invest there, what's out there? The second thing is going to be common mistakes that people make hanging their curtains. Some of these are ones I've done in the past that I have mentioned in a previous video, so I'll make sure to link that one up here or here depending on which side of the screen that pops up on. And then finally going over the actual hanging of curtains in my own home. So that's going to be just in two places really, maybe three. We'll see what kind of footage I have here. But that's going to be in our bedroom, that's going to be in the family room, and then maybe a little bit in my husband's office. I actually don't have the ones from my office hung up just yet. I do have them sitting right in front of me. So again, it's been a long process. There's been a lot going on. So it's still a bit of a work in progress. But if you are looking to hang curtains, if you have any questions on that, I do hope you find this helpful. If you do, make sure you like and subscribe. Let's jump on in. Sitting in front of my desk today in my office, trying to get some of the light from the windows to come in. Usually I'm sitting over there in front of the chairs. You might be able to hear a little bit of some hissing and all of that. The air conditioning units are right on the other side of the house and it is so hot today, so they are working overtime. So curtains 101, what are the different types out there? What is it you're looking for? Kind of just what is available to help you kind of narrow down what it is that's going to work best for your home, for that particular room, and just kind of what the vibe is and what the general feel is that you're going for. Now, curtains are a great thing to bring into your home for a couple of reasons. One, functionality. Obviously, we can use them to darken a room. If you do have a room where either the sun is rising or setting and it comes right through the window, you can use those curtains to help block that out. You can use them for privacy. You can also really use them to help soften the space a little bit, to add a little bit more fabric to the room, to the walls, just to give a little bit more of that softened look. It can also help draw attention to the windows. If you want to lengthen, say, the height of the room, or just really add another statement piece essentially. You can have curtains that kind of blend in, you can have curtains that stand out, you can go really formal, you can go really casual. Now, obviously this video is about using curtains. You can also not use curtains. I do like a lot of the just let the window kind of speak for itself, let the light come in kind of deal. But sometimes you really like the look of curtains and it's just something that I knew I wanted to do more of in this house. It's something I didn't do too much of in our previous home. And when I did, there's a lot of things that I did that I would say are incorrect. Now, obviously, if you are ever doing something in your home and you love it and it's what you wanted, who cares if somebody on the internet says it's incorrect? If it's in your home and you love it, you're good to go. So like I mentioned, you could use curtains for a couple of things. Maybe you want some blackout curtains. If you're looking in a bedroom in particular, or something like a media space, a movie room, or wherever you watch TV, maybe play video games, you might want to make sure that you're not getting that glare in from the windows. So using something like a blackout curtain can be really helpful. Kind of on the opposite end there, you can go for a sheer. This is just a little bit more light and airy. Obviously, it's going to allow that light to pass through, and it can just add, again, that softness, that little bit of fabric there without really providing that huge block to the window itself. It will filter some of the sunlight, but still allow some of it to come in. Now, these can have a little bit of privacy, but if privacy is your main goal, just keep in mind, you probably want something with a thicker fabric, something maybe more towards that blackout line, or all of this kind of in between, depending on the privacy level that you're really going for. Moving to kind of the top of the curtain, you can have a couple of different ways that it either goes on the rod or what it looks like hanging down. Something like a pinch pleat is something that is very clean and classy looking. Reverse pleats are also very, very gorgeous. I like these a lot myself. You can have that rod pocket, so that's going to have a little bit more of a bunching effect. And then you of course have something like the grommet, so that is going to be that larger ring or hole that you do pass that curtain rod through. I'm not a big fan of these. I think they look a little bit too much like a shower curtain for my taste, but I've certainly used them in the past and they're very accessible. You don't have to buy anything extra to hang it, so I totally get why some people do love it. There are definitely more, so I'll be sure to put up pictures of some different examples. Now moving on to how you actually attach the curtain up to the rod or whatever it is. Now you can go with something like a ceiling rod, which is more of a track system that kind of pulls back with clips and has that curtain really, really tight to the ceiling. Other than that, you can have the grommet style that we just spoke about, or some type of hook. So you can see here, they kind of loop into the back of the curtain. It leaves a little bit of space between the top of the curtain and the rod. But my personal favorite are the ring clips. I just really like the look of them. It's what I personally used in the house here. I'll be sure to link everything that I will be showing you down in the description box below in case you are interested in seeing what products I'll be using here in a bit. But another thing I like about these is if you are maybe a little bit short on fabric, you can also use these to kind of lengthen that a little bit. So I have, I believe it was 1.5" rings. You can get 2" rings, and I just think they're really cute. And it's another way to add that, for me, that matte black I was looking for, that kind of metallic element in another space in your home. Outside of your ceiling track and your regular curtain rod, you can also do something like an inside mount. So especially if you are a renter or you don't want to put holes in your wall, you can use something like a tension rod. Now I'm going to get into a couple reasons why I don't think that's the best look. But again, if you are renting, if you can't put holes in your wall, if you just need a temporary solution, these tension rods will absolutely give you the privacy, the darkness, whatever it is that you're looking for without having that kind of more permanent hole in the wall type solution. There are also these double rods. So if you want to have a heavier or maybe a more patterned or something like that curtain on the outside, but also have an option for a sheer curtain. So maybe you pull everything tight for privacy, maybe you pull that back and you can have that sheer kind of just very minimal light filtering on the inside. It does allow you to have the best of both worlds there. Lastly, if you do have a bay window, you can certainly still hang curtains. There is just an attachment, which I have around here somewhere. I was hoping to show it to you. They're probably in my husband's office, but I'll be sure to put some pictures up, and you just attach them in between two of your current curtain rods, and that allows for that bend to really go over and around that bay window if that's the look that you're going for. Moving on to our next category, these are going to be some of those kind of common curtain hanging mistakes, but also how to fix them. Again, if you're looking around and maybe you're not quite sure what to do, or maybe your curtains are just not looking the best that they could and you can't quite put your finger on why. Hopefully this will give you a little bit of help in the right direction. The first thing I'll say is we've talked a little bit about blackout versus light filtering versus privacy. Not thinking about the function of the curtain is something that might trip you up a little bit. So if you're thinking fully and solely on the style, rather than how you really want to use the curtain, you can run into a bit of an issue here. So if you're only thinking about the fact that you really love a sheer curtain, but it's say in your bathroom and you really need that privacy, you could run into a little bit of an awkward problem there. Same thing with your bedroom, or again, if you love the look of something, but it's just not providing that functionality that you really need. It's just a conversation you wanna make sure that you do have with yourself before you make a purchase that you might regret, that might not suit your needs, and it just might have you out of some money that I'm sure could go towards something else that you really do need. Curtains can get very expensive. The ones I found were, I feel like they were very affordable, but especially if you're doing any type of custom curtain, those get out of control very quickly. Next up is choosing the wrong length for your curtain. This and the curtain height are going to kind of go together, but focusing on the bottom of that curtain first, you do want to make sure that they are all the way to the floor in a couple of varieties. You can have a slight float to your curtain, which is less than 1 inch up off the floor. Anything more than that, I really feel like anything more than 1/2 inch, it kind of looks like they shrunk. They don't really fit the space. They weren't meant to go there, especially when we get into these very, very short curtains, which is something I have done in the past, so I will call myself out here. From there, you go a little bit lower to the floor, so a kiss the floor type situation where it is just barely brushing the floor. This is one of my personal favorite styles here. You can have a little bit longer where it just breaks the floor, so you have that little bit of a bend, and there's a little bit of fabric on the floor, all the way to a puddle. This is a little bit more of a formal look, and it's not one that I particularly like the best, mostly for kind of cleaning and cleanliness purposes. So we do have a dog and a cat, and just general, the house gets dusty, you have to vacuum, and having to move these puddles of curtains that can probably collect a lot of dust and grime and grossness, not something I'm really looking to do. Plus, it's a little bit more of a casual look instead of that more formal, which I'm just not really into an overly formal home. So if you are looking at that, maybe especially in, say, a dining room or something like that, where you do want to have a little bit more of a formal space, then that puddle can look really great. Now, if you are somebody who does have a heater or something right along the floor, then I would suggest just not doing curtains altogether, to be completely honest. You can do a shorter curtain. Obviously, we don't want any type of fire hazard, but if that's the case, I really, and again, in my opinion, obviously, do what you want in your home. But for me, I think it would be better to just do some type of blinds, shades, something like that, rather than a shortened curtain that kind of looks like maybe it shrunk a little bit. So there are other options, but if you do have that heater along the floor, make sure that you do not put a curtain over that, again, just for safety reasons. Next up is kind of the wrong height. So typically, if we put that curtain rod right at the top of the window, it can make the room and the window look a lot shorter. Bringing that curtain rod up higher above the window tends to make it look a little bit better. It should still be a couple inches off the ceiling for the most part, unless you are doing that track along the ceiling. But if you are going with a more traditional curtain rod, a couple inches down from the ceiling is what you're looking for there to really give the top of that window some breathing room. Now, that will not always be the case, so I don't, again, have the curtains hung up in my office just yet, but I'll definitely show you a picture here. It does have that transom at the top of the window, which means it runs right into the bottom of where the crown molding is, which leaves over a little bit more of a struggle when trying to decide where to hang a curtain rod. It will be pretty much right below the crown molding here, just so it does still cover the top of that transom window. So if and when that does get pulled shut, it does cover all of the space where light could come through. Next up is the wrong width. So if you have curtains that are a little bit too thin, it can, again, just look a little bit off, like something's a little bit just not as good as it could be. You want to make sure that you do have enough fabric that if you do close them over the window, it does cover everything and it's not pulled super tight. You do want to still have a little bit of movement, a little bit of that pleating or whatever kind of gathering there is. Sometimes this means you do want to maybe think about getting some extra panels. Now, obviously, like I say, budget always has to come first, but if you want to kind of bulk up the look of those curtains as they're pulled back on the sides, you can add extra panels to the sides just to really give it that kind of extra fluff and volume that personally I think looks fantastic. Next is kind of an incorrect width. So we know now where we want to hang the curtain rod, we know where the curtain needs to settle, we know the width of the curtain, but how far outside of that window do you really want to hang the curtain rod? You do want to make sure that when those curtains are pulled back, that they do fully land outside of that window so that you have enough space to pull them back all the way and let all of that light come in when you're not using the curtain itself. So in a minute, I'll go into the measurements that I use and all of that, but just make sure that at its full openness, it is outside of the window casing so that you're not blocking any of that light. One that can really run into a larger issue, so a lot of these are just kind of aesthetic, but one that you really want to make sure you are paying attention to for kind of safety purposes is making sure that your hardware is actually sturdy enough for the curtain weight that you're purchasing, especially if you're going into a heavy drapery, if you're going into a velvet, or any of that heavier fabric. You really want to make sure that you're not buying a curtain rod that is too flimsy, that will bend, that will bow, or potentially even rip out of the wall. But you do want to make sure that the curtain rod itself can stand up to the weight of your curtain so that it's not pulling down anything on top of you. One of the big saying is measure twice, cut once. That is very true when it comes to curtains. So just making sure that you measure. I know that I kind of took the whole, we have 10-foot ceilings on the first floor, 9-foot on the second floor. So I was going to buy the curtain that is closest there to the height of the ceiling. Now, what that did not take into account, and I didn't realize until I was actually hanging the curtains themselves, that we do have some areas in the home where the ceiling isn't as tall as the 10-foot mark on the first floor. For example, in the family room, we do have the, I'm blanking on what it's actually called, but that kind of tray ceiling with all of the crisscrossing beams and all of that. And where those beams do come down, obviously the ceiling is shorter. So all of the curtain rods are under that. So that does kind of cut us off an extra 6 inches, which meant that the curtains that I bought were far longer than I anticipated. Same thing with my husband's office, the bay window in there. It does come down a significant amount from the ceiling before that indentation of the window, which I did not take into account. So just even if you know the heights of your ceilings, be sure you measure just so you don't run into the issue I did of buying curtains that I bought way too long. So then that means I could have saved some money on buying the appropriate length if I had just really measured beforehand and not just went with what I thought was the correct length. Next up is not ironing your curtains before you hang them. So I am not a big iron person, but when you do pull them out of the packaging, they do have all of those creases. You can clearly see the rectangles where it was all folded up onto each other. And when you do hang those, you know, especially if you've put all this time and effort into picking out a perfect curtain, you measured a million times and you got the curtain rod exactly where it needs to be and it's the length. Once you hang all of that up and if you can see all of those kind of checkerboards of creases, it's just gonna take away from the look a little bit. So I would either run the iron over them really quickly, or if you have something like a steam dryer, tumble dry that for a couple of minutes just to help loosen those wrinkles. It will just look a lot better, a lot crisper, a lot cleaner, and I think you'll really like the result. And then finally, just kind of a style mismatch. So if you are going for a velvet and it's luxurious and it's beautiful, but it's going in a very casual room, it can just read a little bit disconnected. So just make sure that the style that you're going for matches kind of the ambiance. Make sure that it matches the use and function of the room. So there's not kind of this mismatch as to what it is that you're going for, that feel, that vibe, all of that in the room where the curtains are hanging. All right, moving on. So I did go ahead and get most of the curtains that I purchased hung up. Now, definitely need more, but I knew that I did want curtains and I knew that I really loved the look of these nice airy white linen ones. Now they're not actually linen, but they were very affordable in my opinion. And again, I'll have everything linked below. So I had these white linen-ish curtains from Amazon. I did buy those black rings with the clasps, a matte black rod for each of the rooms. I did buy two separate styles here. So in the bedroom, I had the one that wraps around all the way to the wall, whereas in the family room and everywhere else in the home, it was just that kind of traditional straight bar style. For all of the heights from the ceiling, except for again, what I'll be doing in my office because of that transom window, I went 6 inches down from the ceiling, and that's where the holes for the brackets started. I was also sure to measure 10 inches out from the sides of the windows to make sure that it makes that window look a little taller, a little wider, and leaves enough room for the fabric to be pulled back all the way when it's not in use. Not a lot of these were in the studs. I think only 1 or 2 studs were actually hit in the entire home, and it was something that I had the stud finder. I also looked back through all of the videos I had of the home being built just to see if I was even in the ballpark of running into a stud or if it was just straight up in the drywall. I would highly suggest also having something long enough to connect the 2 sides together and making sure that you do have a level so that they aren't kind of mismatched from side to side. Now, I did not have something long enough for the most part that I could handle by myself to get all the way across. So what I did is I measured 6 inches down from the ceiling all the way across in about 2-foot sections. And then I went back through, used the level cross to make sure that it all did line up. Remember that your walls and your ceilings are not likely to be perfectly flat and even. So you do still want to double check that 6 inches down from one side and 6 inches down from the other side might still not be completely even. So definitely double check across when you can. Making sure to drill the pilot holes, use the hammer to get the drywall anchor all the way in, and then using the drill to make sure that all of the screws were in nice and tight. Now this did take a while. It's not incredibly difficult, it's a little bit cumbersome, and you just want to make sure that you are taking the time, really measure everything out. I cannot emphasize that enough. You do not want to end up with kind of mismatched heights anywhere. Just really take your time here. If you are using these kind of clamp ones, I would suggest also before you start trying to hang the curtain up there, open all of the clasps that you can first, because I did find that some of them were a little tougher, and while you're up on the ladder and you're trying to clasp every little piece of the fabric, it can get very cumbersome when you're holding a bunch of fabric in one hand. It's just, go ahead and loosen them up beforehand so that you don't run into an issue later. Now, as I said, they were a little bit long, and I like that just above the floor type of style. So what you can do is obviously you can sew and hem them to the appropriate length. Now, I don't have a sewing machine, and if I did, I would definitely have to relearn how to thread the whole thing and how to sew, to be completely honest. So what I did, I took a little bit of a shortcut here and I just got that fusing tape. So this tape is where you have the strips inside the fabric and you use an iron to go across, and it does fuse that fabric together. They're not perfect. They are definitely working for me for now, and I'm very happy with the results, but they can always be a little bit better and a little bit more secure. So if you are either in a pinch or you don't have a sewing machine, this fabric fusing tape works pretty well. I was actually very impressed with it, and it is what I've done with all of the curtains in the home so far. Now I did run into a little bit of some kind of strange situations in the family room. So as you can see here, there is very minimal space between the window and the fireplace as opposed to the window and the wall. So I still went 6 inches down from the ceiling. It was still about 10 inches from the corner of the window toward the wall side. Now what I did with the other side, because again, there was really only a couple inches to work with, I looked at how close the finial, that kind of decorative piece at the end, how close that was to the wall, and kind of mimicked that on the other side, just so it still looked as even as possible. Now, because there is so much more room on one side, I did shift the curtains all the way to the right and to the left. I think it did turn out really well. So just keep in mind, they don't need to be completely even if your room can't support that. So there is still a little bit of a work in progress. We did also get some of the roller shades, which I'll talk about a little bit more later on. So I personally really do like the layered look of having a shade and curtains. Now that is a little bit controversial in the design world, but it's what I like and it's my home, so it's what I'm going to do. Now I would have actually really loved to do a Roman shade, and I kind of think about that a lot right now, but these roller shades are very pretty and I think that it completes the look pretty well. And most of these are blackout shades, so we do have that little bit more privacy, or we can just filter out some more of the light with the sheer curtains. That way we have a little bit of both going on. So for now, like I said, I still have a couple more to go. You'll notice that in the family room, the brackets are up for the roller shades, but the roller shades themselves are not up. That's a story for another day. I kind of messed up there and they don't fit. So we'll go over all of that later on. If you are looking to hang some curtains, I do hope that this was helpful for you. If you did find something useful, I would love for you to stick around and subscribe. Other than that, I can't wait to see you in the next video. Until next time, bye.